Something I have consistently seen with people reading Chainsaw Man for the first time is the fact that people really underappreciate Denji's goals, even his goals as early as the first chapter. Either reducing them to him being a pervert, or someone who lacks imagination and ambition. With the Chainsaw Man anime on the horizon and no doubt bringing with it an influx of new fans, I want to set the record straight on the simple beauty of Denji's goals, his ambitions and how they evolve over the series, being one of the most successful and well-written humanizations of a character in manga and anime. Too often does a character have a lofty goal which distinguishes them as someone special, someone unique, and they have a drive to go after it even at the risk of their own life, which marks them as someone who is unrelatable to a majority of people, and that is why I personally believe Denji to be a more human character than any major shonen character. Denji certainly risks his life to pursue his own goals, but only when it becomes clear his life will end either way with regards to his actions. I'd like to split this video down into 6 parts, explaining the major shifts in Denji's personal goals and how they demonstrate the evolution of his character throughout the series. Each one of these goals can clearly tell us where Denji is as a character at that particular moment and can give us a deeper context for how he is developing and how he might develop further into the series, provided that his characterization remains consistent, which I am very hopeful that it will. The first goal Denji has at the beginning of the series, other than the nebulous idea of having a good idea, is to have some toast with something on it. Yes, that is how I am going to sum up his first selection of goals. The simple idea of having a different taste to his meals, to have something which for most would be a simple thing, is his dream, and it clearly shows both just how he is a very unfortunate circumstance, and how unfair his life is. It is a tactic used to make people feel either attached or sorry for a character quickly by showing the audience how they are in a worse situation than the viewer. However, this simple goal means so much more than what people give it credit for. Yes, it shows everyone that Denji is a person of simple pleasures, but it also tells us that Denji was in a place where he couldn't dream of having bigger goals than that, where he had already come to the conclusion that his current life was as good as it was ever going to get, hence why having toast with something on it was his dream, an unobtainable future. Going beyond even that, however, is the fact that this shows us as the audience that Denji here has effectively given up. Yes, he moves about, yes, he does things to keep himself alive, but at the end of the day, that is all because of Pochita. Denji has given up on himself, which is only further exemplified by the fact of what his dreams and goals aren't. He doesn't dream of paying off his debt, he doesn't dream of having a good life with Pochita, and this is because he has given up on the idea that he can be alright, that he can move forwards from this point, and that, like it or not, realize it or not, Denji here is depressed, and that is honestly something which carries on throughout the entire series, and it is first shown to us in a moment which to most people I see just reducing it down to a simple, "Oh, he's in a bad situation and we should feel bad for him," when it conveys so much more than that. The next major shift in his goals we see, is when he decides to go all in on the idea of touching some boobs. Here is where I find the absolute worst understanding of Denji's character and his goals, with people simply reducing it to him being a horny teenager who just wants to feel up a girl. But no, oh no, that isn't the case, at least not fully. Denji comes upon this goal, when he himself is looking for something, anything to go after in his own life, something which will fill up the hollow feeling he has inside of himself. The idea of him giving into his libido, one which was no doubt long suppressed, in order to avoid dealing with the source of the problem, is such a sad and depressing idea, one which to me is a clear sign that Denji isn't even aware of what he is seeking or that he is depressed. I am no doctor or psychologist, but I have known depressed people on a personal level, and I know that sometimes or even a lot of the time they will seek out something else. Something to take their mind off of the misery they are in, to make themselves feel happy, even if only for a moment, and even if inevitable it doesn't actually make them feel happy when they get it. Just the idea of it is enough for them. So you have Denji, a teenager with a suppressed libido, placed into an incredible stressful situation where his life is on the line every day, with almost no choice in how he lives his life and is dealing with his own depression in a self-destructive manner, is it any wonder he decides to just follow his dick when it comes to seeking purpose? The fact that so many people just reduce this to "oh my god, he's a pervert" really does a disservice to Fujimoto, who went through the effort of giving us such a thought-out motive. And if you don't believe me that was the intention, wait till we get to the next goal where I'll continue to prove my point. Speaking of his next goal, what is it, you might ask? It's simply, to have a meaningful relationship with someone, to have the affect of someone else. Because when Denji achieved his previous goal, when he touched boobs, as expected he felt nothing, because on the inside Denji isn't any more of a pervert than a young man his age is. He was clinging to something he thought would make him happy, and when he found it, he came to the realization that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. If you'll forgive me for using this meme, Denji doesn't want to be horny, he just wants to be happy. Denji, from what we know of his history, had a mother who died when he was most likely too young to really remember her, and had an abusive father who would be unlikely to show any sort of affection towards him, and that only continued as he was dragged into paying off the man's debt to the Yakuza. Is it truly any wonder that Denji would go along with his libido, his instinct, the only thing which was acting as a guiding force for him at that moment? And once that urge was fulfilled, he was left empty again, because like Makima said, things like that feel better the better you know the person, the deeper your relationship is. Denji at this point isn't seeking a romantic relationship, he has no context for such a thing. Rather what he is after is some genuine affection and relationships. This is most clearly shown with how during the life he spends with Aki and Power, this is the happiest Denji is throughout the entire series, not when he is spending time with Rize, not when he is with Makima, but rather when he is with Aki and Power, two people who he actually built up a meaningful and undeniable affectionate relationship with. I have heard people say that Denji just needs to get laid, or that Denji should have just left with Rize and he would be fine, and I wholeheartedly disagree with this on a fundamental level with regards to both the story that is being written, as to who Denji is as a character and what his goals actually are. If Denji had, for instance, had sexual relations with Makima, Power, Rize, or hell even Kobani, he wouldn't have been fulfilled, he wouldn't have been better, he would have been worse. Because not only would he now have a distorted view on how relationships should work, but upon finishing the act, he would no doubt be left empty again. As for leaving with Rize, that entire can of worms makes me wonder if we are reading the same thing, or if I am really just interpreting everything in a way that is different from everyone else. If Denji had left with Rize, what then? Could he really have felt fulfilled with her? An assassin sent after his life. Someone who wasn't even interested in him, but rather what he was, and only changed her mind because she felt a kinship with him. A relationship built upon a dependency on another is just going to go up in smoke and flames, because that is what Denji would have become. He would have become dependent on Rize, just like how he became dependent on Makima towards the end, not to mention he would be leaving behind two of the only true relationships he had developed with Aki and Power. Then to consider Denji's own immature understanding of love and relationships, and it would have only ended in tears and an even more broken and depressed Denji down the road. And this is all without considering Rize's own issues and how she would deal with what is essentially a depressed child who isn't even capable of realizing he is depressed. But enough of that, this wasn't supposed to be me ranting, but an expression of the beauty of Denji's goals, so I'll move on to the next one. The next one is a goal which gets memed to hell and back and is taken vastly out of context for the sake of making a joke, and that goal is to be Makima's dog. Now before you start barking, let's break this down alright, so we can appreciate how this goal is a wonderful expression of Denji's mental state and how he is both progressing and regressing at the same time. And this is the point where Denji, finally after so long, seems to be accepting his own depression. Denji at this point has just lost Aki, at his own hands no less, as someone who, if you'll remember, was fulfilling his previous and still important goal of having genuine affection in his life. So, we have him both having to deal with the guilt of killing what is essentially his brother at this point, we have him dealing with the stages of grief, the loss of half of the actual positive support structure he has in his life, and the other half is also going through their own grief over the act, so they aren't much help. Denji at this point is an absolute wreck. The fact that he isn't a mass of screaming, crying, and blabbering alone is proof enough that he is a strong character internally, but his actions also beautifully show that even the strongest people can crack and crumble. And then Makima, oh Makima, that manipulative wretch, comes in and offers him a poisoned olive branch. She effectively gives him an out, a way to escape from the pain and to leave behind his guilt. At this point Denji is worse than he was at the beginning of the series, dealing with things no person should ever have to face alone. I said at the beginning Denji had given up on himself, that in the first chapter he had already accepted his lot in life and was only pushing forwards because of Pochita. At this point Denji gives up on everything. He gives up on his contract with Pochita, severing the ties he has with him. He gives up on power and the relationship that they have developed, and it is heartbreaking. Watching this young man who we have seen slowly dragging himself from the abyss of depression completely fall backwards into it and refusing to reach out for help just hurts to read. And then people have the audacity to blame Denji for Power's death by Makima's hand. They completely ignore the setup of his character arc and how at this point he had already lost himself to the point he didn't even recognize what was going on around him. And once the deed was done, he only served to become further absorbed into the abyss which was swarming around him. Being Makima's dog, this desire, this wonderful and beautiful idea of completely giving yourself over to another, of being completely in their care, it is the ultimate sign of trust, or at least it should be. But here, it is dragged out and twisted for the sake of Makima's ploy, not only servicing Denji's story but also to highlight Makima's own cruelty. And this is the point everyone decides to use for memes, for calling Denji a simp and saying about how he should have killed Makima then and there without realizing the pain they felt at Power's death, was 1,000 times worse for Denji, to the point his mind actually shatters at this point, leaving him essentially a puppet for Makima. For Fujimoto's beautiful writing to be reduced to that, I truly don't understand. But of course, that isn't the final goal for Denji. We still have some way to go in exploring his development as a character through his goals. The next goal he has, which I am going to look at, is his goal to be Chainsaw Man, to bask in the fame of his good deeds, to reap the rewards of all the suffering he has endured up until this point. Now if you can see how this is similar to his desire for breasts, then congratulations, we are on a similar page here. Because this is Denji repeating his previous mistakes, and while that might frustrate some people, for me it is fascinating, to see how an author creates such a cyclical story about depression, because to me that is what this is. It shows Denji's progression to recovery, if you can even consider depression a recoverable state, his stumbling and his actions of falling for false hopes, for quick fixes, and how even when things are going the best they ever could be or ever have for you, everything can always crumble away, everything can always get worse even when you try your best, be it for your own actions or the actions of those around you, you just can't escape it. Every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, of every decade, of every lifetime is a fight against it, and your own strength, the strength of others, all has limits, and those limits just might not be enough. This isn't a war you are guaranteed to win, no matter how many battles you face. And this sentiment is grandly displayed by showing us just how Denji is on the repeat. So that seems to be where we are going with the story as we enter into the final part before the story, with Denji once again entering into a new goal, which is just a repeat of a previous goal of building bonds with Naruto and maybe Kishibe and Kobani. So, it seems like we are going to see him try and rebuild himself. I wonder how this will progress into the story. Will we have to wait and see? But honestly, I just want to see Denji continue on his path to develop as a character. But that is all I really have to say about this subject. This is how I would describe the beauty of Denji's goals, not beautiful in the sense of it being something you would bask in, but rather a beautiful in the sense of something you just want to stare in awe of something and is something that inspires you. That is just how I feel regarding this story. Denji has become one of my favorite characters in any recent media, and Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man has become one of my all-time favorite manga, so seeing them both being reduced to a bare-bones skeleton. I have been the Anonymous Weeb, and this has been my explanation of the beauty of Denji's goals in Chainsaw Man. I wish you the best day wherever you are, and if you enjoyed this video of me rambling and perhaps ranting about some stuff, then feel free to press the like button. If you have your own thoughts, interpretations, I'd love to hear it in the comments, and if you want to see what other videos I might post when I do in fact post them, don't forget to press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Farewell, and I apologize to anyone who had to sit through this video, but I was asked to actually make longer videos, so, you know.